What a beautiful morning it is. Wednesday morning, right? Am I Jeffrey? Yes, indeed. Welcome to your perfect morning starter on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka. How are you doing today? How are you, Jeffrey?
I'm very well. And how are you doing?
Very well.
Good morning and welcome to the program. As always, we help you keep track of what's playing out in the country. Bright and early right here on Channels Television. We're broadcasting live from Lagos, Nigeria. I like to call it, as we know, the commercial nerve center of the country and our global headquarters here at Channels Television, and there's a lot going on. Sometimes it's a mirage or a mixed bag of stories. On one hand, there's success story from security agencies and doing their work, like the abductees that were rescued recently, and then in the other hand, you see another set of attacks happening. So it's a mixed bag of stories wherever you look at all of these things. But the most important thing right now is to the effect that we are making good progress with the issue of state police. The president has now officially transmitted the constitutional amendment that will give way for some of these things that are necessary. So the way it works is that the bill will go to the National Assembly. It will be passed by the National Assembly after all the clauses have been considered. And when all of that is done, it has to pass through the State Houses of Assembly, where 2/3 of the Houses of Assembly will have to also endorse the passage. And then it now becomes a new part of our ground norm. I've always say, let's be ready for the abuses that will come with state police. Because with the greatest respect, some of these leaders are not mature enough to manage power. Sometimes the little they have, you see how they handle it. Some outrightly fail, some go beyond their power limits and all of that. But at the end, Bukola, is for us to be able to have a safer country. You know, when we were having a conversation with Mr. Shea yesterday, he said something that I kept processing afterwards when I asked him that question. I said, why the people don't have a problem? The security agencies know their work. The security agencies know what they are doing or what they should do, but the political will is lacking in most times, or sometimes even political interference. So I was making a case that the government need to show cause why people should support them. And he said, look, who is most affected when it comes to insecurity? It's the people. How many of the big men do you see being kidnapped or being affected by some of these things? So it begins to give impetus to the argument around state police, community police, and all of that. I think it was one of the leaders of the security agencies, I think the DSS that talked about, this was reported, talked about community police or community being the first line of defense in that sense, because it's important for all of us to be able to put hands together to secure our country. We know the levels of quote-unquote irresponsibility that can come from government, but if we are the ones most affected, we need to look for a way to see what we can do to protect ourselves, because the incidence of killings and mass abduction is not acceptable.
Indeed, and you know, perhaps because of that concern about state police that you've always expressed,
I will keep expressing
that is not just a concern within the fourth estate of the realm. It also appears as if it's one expressed within the National Assembly as well, because if you listen to the Senate President yesterday, after speaking on President Tinubu's transmission of the state police bill to the Senate for automatic consideration, he left a curious and compelling message, one that would make you do a double take for governors. He said, and not quoting him copiously now, that the governors should not leave a state police that they themselves would be afraid of when they leave office. And that was quite instructive and a message for the governors to reflect on, because besides the need for the Constitution to be amended to accommodate powers for the subnationals to be able to provide intervention in the area of state police and to address our growing insecurity challenges, there is also that very real worry that this could be left to a lot of abuse, especially during elections, perhaps to come against perceived political enemies. But we hope that that is not the case, and as much as possible perhaps we'll be leaving the subnationals, the the benefit of the doubt, that this will go on well. But then it's also interesting that the president is giving this all of the push that he should, because don't forget that the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Benjamin Kalu, had provided assurances that the House of Reps would give accelerated hearing to the matter of constitution review for state police, and in fact I think it passed second reading at the House of Representatives overwhelmingly in a vote of about 289 to about 44 or thereabout. And so the National Assembly on its own had been working assiduously to ensure that the state police bill amendment to the Constitution gets accelerated consideration such that we can have a document. But of course it's going to form part of our conversation today, and some of the questions for me would be, what measure of powers would the governors now be able to wield? What would be the outlook, in terms of structure of state police? And we'll be asking some of the experts who should know, who will be weighing in on this and helping us to understand, in the absence of, having a preview of the framework, in the bill that is being worked upon, what should it look like, and how do we guard against abuse in the structure, in the matter of state policing, when it becomes tangible, as a national security outlook in our current security architecture. But Jeffrey, what is also important to note is to commend our security operatives for what they're currently doing, the intervention they're providing, regardless of all the challenges. We see, the cache of arms intercepted and displayed in Kogi State. We see the neutralizing of a bandit leader in Kogi State in the last couple of days. We see the rescue of women and children, predominantly also in Borno, in recent times. Now, if the security operatives could achieve this feat amid the challenges that they currently have, and speaking of which, I can't help but remember the conversation with the senator from Kebbi State on our sister political program yesterday, when he did confirm what has been reported earlier, that the budget allocated to the armed forces, only 10% has been operationalized in its capital component. So in spite of those challenges, our security operatives are still able, to achieve the feat that they currently are achieving. How much more if they're giving the wherewithal, all of the resources that they require, then perhaps would have gone more than halfway in the fight against insecurity. And the threat that these non-state actors who have turned Nigeria into a killing field, the threat that they pose is still very, very real. It is not yet Uhuru as far as the fight against insecurity is concerned.
Yes, I know we're expecting those children to be released. We're praying and hoping. I'm sure things have been done. Because I've always maintained that, yes, there are saboteurs within the rank and file of security agencies. There are issues of budgeting, but in all, these guys know what to do. If the politicians who are leaders of our country give them all the support they need, by all the support, the funding that is required, the free hand to do their job, I don't think anything is in doubt. They have their issues, and we know what those issues are. But right now, I'll continue that call I made yesterday, that I'm looking for a way the president will make some very dangerous pronouncement, like close this operation safe corridor, lock it up, at least for now. After all, he said it. It's not in perpetuity. Let him just end it. And then go gun blazing on these guys. Go gun blazing. The state must not lose the monopoly of violence to non-state actors, whatever shape they come with, whether they are bandits, terrorists, kidnappers, whatever names and shape they come with. Of course, the politicians have taken turns to say, after the election, there will be this. So it's almost with the words, even with the words from the president, who I referred to, who talked about that conversation, who made that statement when he met with the people in Plateau. It's clear that they know who, or they may have an idea who sponsors some of these things. And politicians may not necessarily be innocent. Some of these politicians, I should contextualize that properly, because at the first time they say it was APC people. I remember Bukola that it was APC that was responsible for bringing Boko Haram. That's why even Kashim Shettima said they were saying he's the leader of Boko Haram at some point. Now we have come to this point. They're alleging that the opposition is also responsible one way or the other. Look, I don't care what you guys want to do with your politicking. I don't think Nigerians really care. Politic without involving all of these issues around national insecurity. There are places that play high-level politics without making the country unstable. The kind of conversation we want to have is policy against policy, counter-policy against counter-policy, economic, all kinds of policy, not the lives of people used as a means to, as a sacrifice or as a means to make the country ungovernable so that they have a point. That is if the politicians are responsible or they are taking turns to be responsible for feeling instability and insecurity. It is totally unacceptable. It is totally unacceptable. It's not acceptable. So
while it's unacceptable,
we must speak against it.
Why is it unacceptable, to politicize security at the expense of, lives that are at risk every day? Those who have been killed, who have been maimed, those whose lives have been destroyed, those who perhaps never recover from, their family members having been tortured and killed at the hands of kidnappers. It is also instructive. It is important to read between the lines and try to find out what the politicians are saying, behind what they're saying, and they're not coming out straight with it. Because if they're saying that, the opposition is responsible for insecurity, then they know something that you and I do not know. And so that itself should be probed. And
who probed them, Bukola? When the president sat down with leaders and said, don't allow your, quote unquote, your state to be used as a killing field. Because all of these guys are doing these things because they don't want me to campaign. But I will campaign for re-election. That is the president. The Senate president, the number 3 man, came and said, I always refer to this in on record, said, don't worry.
Once the election
is over.
So what does he know that we do not know? The governor of Edo State also said, why are you indulging in kidnapping? Kidnapping and insecurity would not stop the president from campaigning. What does he know? Who are those responsible?
That is why I'm saying they should let the security agencies, the military, the police, the DSS, the NSCDC, everybody who's here, to do their work. If there's a governor, if there's somebody in the presidency, if there's somebody anywhere who has a hand in whether it's the opposition or somebody in government who has a hand in insecurity in this country, let us bring them and put them on trial. Public
trial, as a matter of fact.
Put them on trial.
If there are sponsors within the government, then let Nigerians know.
Anyone will. So since
Nigerians reserve the right to know if there are people in government who are providing information, who are profiting from insecurity. The people of Nigeria, the Federal Republic of Nigeria, deserve to know who these people are. So put them on trial, get them prosecuted, and close all accounts linked to these people, and let Nigeria move forward. It is very, very important.
So whether they're in government, whether they're outside government, whoever is remotely or directly, but is a promoter of this madness that has subjected our country to what it is today, this thing has to stop one way or the other, or manage a lot more better than it is. So we're just, if you call it venting, is fine. If you call it just expressing ourselves, is fine. I am sure you are affected one way or the other. For the fact that it's happening in Borno or somewhere and it's not happening in Lagos, doesn't mean everywhere is cool in that sense. The security agencies will do their part, but all of us must come together to lend our voices and say, government, show some level of responsibility. Be more proactive. Be more stronger in your positioning. Allow these guys to do their work so that Nigeria can be safe for all of us, because juvenile politics, Bukola, I'm tired. I'm exhausted from juvenile politics. By now, I want to be seeing fireworks of idea and counter ideas. Let us come together and make our country great. Bukola, what else do we have to talk about before we jump on the papers?
It's still security related, and the Lagos State Police Command, on the last 24 hours was able to intercept a vehicle carrying a cache of arms, and of course, uniforms, camouflage uniforms that we usually know with the Nigerian army. The truck was allegedly conveying military uniforms to the southeast. 47 sacks of military camouflage and 80 cartons of suspected illicit substances were intercepted along the Lekki-Ekpe axis in a major intelligence-led operation by the Lagos State Police Command. The police commissioner who addressed journalists on Tuesday said the operation was allegedly conveying the military uniforms to the southeast, and 4 suspects have been arrested in connection with this incident, and they're currently assisting investigators in efforts to identify and apprehend those behind the importation. Now, that also, leads us to the matter of insecurity, where we see these crimes being perpetrated by bandits who are in military camouflage. And so where is the source of funding for this? Where do they get this military camouflage? Where do they get them from? Who is sponsoring them? Where do they get? And the fight against insecurity has always been linked to the perpetuation of the crimes. Really, have always been linked to serious use of hard drugs and substances, because these guys cannot do most of the things that they do when they're not under the influence. And so the supply chain for this also must also be probed and investigated. And how do they get the arms? The what do they call it now? The Committee on Small Arms and Light Weapons often provides intervention in these areas and speaks, and advocates for the closing of the links to the supply of illicit arms and light weapons. But much more than that, the sources of funding must also be discovered, because if that is not tackled, it will be tantamount to addressing the symptoms and not the root causes. So where is the source of funding of these small arms and light weapons? And it's a very scary thing when these bandits appear in this military camouflage, because more often than not, those who are unsuspecting, the vulnerable targets, mistake them for security operatives, and then they fall into the arms of non-state actors rather than those who should be protecting them. It's really scary, Jeffrey.
For me, that's why Bukola, I'm saying, anybody who is, these are the small fries, the ones that are caught. These are just like the errand boys, per se, the foot soldiers. Who are those
Absolutely.
behind these things? Trust me, the government knows, whether those people are in government or the outside government. So let's say it again to the federal government of Nigeria. Nobody will take your fight against insecurity and terrorism seriously until you get the big guns out, whether through sanctions, through, I don't know what is used in these measures, but what the average Nigerian would prefer is bring them to book. There is no way they don't know. This is government. They know who is responsible. No matter who, government as a government, business, whoever those set of people are, we must find them and bring them to book and stop this spate of insecurity that we're dealing with. All right. Well,
and security happens to be our first conversation this morning.
Yes, exactly. So, I was just smiling because I saw an sister station where I think one of the aides to the president is being quoted to say that the level of hunger Nigerians has complained about, he has not seen it. These are the things that makes me angry, Bukola. These are statements that piss me off, and sometimes I feel like going gun blazing, but for my professional ethics, I will just keep cool. Because these are the things that makes Nigeria not to have interest in supporting government sometimes, because of the mixed messaging. June 12th, the president recognized the level of hardship. The speech is there. Go and read it if you've never seen it, or go and watch the video. June 12th. 2 things he talked about. He talked about security. He understands that there cannot be prosperity without security. He acknowledged the shortcomings of his leadership, but he said he's doing something about it. He also acknowledged the degree of pain and hardship that the twin policy of government has brought on the Nigerian people and their businesses. And he's appealing for understanding and then an aide to the president will come out and say, the level of hunger Nigerians are complaining about, you're not seeing it. Are you serious, sir? Because you increase salary by 100% from 30,000 to 70,000. There's a car I use. When we bought that car, it was 13,000 naira to fill the tank.
To fill the tank. How much do you fill your tank now, Jeffrey?
As at that time, this is just an average car. As at that time, I didn't really know how much fuel was, to be very honest. I just knew it was below 200. That time there was subsidy. So I just go to the fuel station, sometimes I don't even come down, and they fill the tank. Today, that same car, it will take me almost 90 to 100,000 to fill it. The 70,000 he's talking about, in today's dollar terms, is about $50-something. The 30,000 he's talking about, in yesterday dollar terms, was about $60-something. So these are things that makes Nigerians angry. The president is saying one thing, his aide is saying the other thing. Guys, just put your house together. Don't piss Nigeria off, they're already angry. By coming to say the level of hunger the Nigerians are complaining about, you're not seeing it. Are you serious? Don't get us started.
Jeffrey, now that you mention it, it makes me remember the conversation on our sister political program yesterday, and that's why it's important for Nigerians to interrogate most of the commentary that come from politicians and try to read between the lines and find out in whose interest is, whatever subject in contention actually is. The senator representing Kebbi, I wonder if it's Kebbi South or North yesterday, has defected to the ADC from the All Progressives Congress, citing unfair treatment from the party and, questioning why he was disqualified in the first place. And of course, referring to the promise made by Mr. President that all the members of the Senate would get automatic tickets. Now, one of the things that the senator said that was quite compelling for me was that after they subjected themselves to all manner of wrongdoing, only for them to lose out like this, without quoting him copiously now. And so he's admitting, that the Red Chamber, members of the Red Chamber subjected themselves to all manner of wrongdoing just to give the president the moral support that he needed to succeed. And so he didn't get the ticket after all and has now defected to the ADC. And he went ahead to talk about how only 10% of the security budget allocated to the defense has been operationalized, and that is part of the problem, bedeviling insecurity in the country. That's part of the reasons why we're seeing this lack of progress, or relatively very little progress in the fight against insecurity. He also went ahead to talk about other things in Kebbi politics. But I'm wondering that if he actually got the APC ticket, would he spill the beans on his political party the way that he has? So, sometimes when, the odds are in favor of politicians, then you would not hear, anything about how whatever that was being cooked got burnt, in the house, because at that time it's favoring them. And so Nigerians must interrogate some of these issues. Is it in your own interest? If it's not in your own interest, then, be prepared to make an informed choice at the polls. But sadly, that is not what happens oftentimes at the polls, Jeffrey.
Yes, so Bukola, there's a campaign we need to start as Nigerians, and I'm ready to be at the vanguard of that campaign. The independence of the legislature. The independence of the legislature. Unfortunately, our legislature haven't lived up to the expectations of Nigeria. They can come and debate. Our good friends at Adaramadu who come and debate back and forth. But just ask Nigerians whether they are happy with the National Assembly or their state. The State Houses of Assembly are the worst. That one is some of them, or I don't want to use most of them. I say some of them. They're just there as appendages, with the greatest respect. If we have them do their work, the executive will set up. That's the truth. That's why when military takes over a government, that's the first people they target, because it's called the People's House. You and I can gather and go and talk to the president or go and talk to the governor. They are representing us across constituencies. So that is the advocacy we must start to see how we can make the legislature as independent
work
as
for
possible.
The people.
Work for the people, not just being yes men and yes men, passing every budget, everything that comes from the executive. But we'll take a break, and when we come back, let's tell you what we're doing today. We're talking national security. Cooking gas is super expensive. We're talking to the people who understand how it works. We're talking about the state of the economy. But first, we'll look at what the dailies are saying. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Let's get into the papers. And joining us this morning is Mr. Igo Akiria, member, Nigerian Guild of Editors, who joins us virtually this morning. Mr. Igo, it's good to see you again. Good morning. Oh, you're right there in our Abuja studio.
Yeah, Bukola, absolutely. Good morning. It's always a pleasure to be here. And of course, Godfrey, I was interested in what you guys are saying in the studio. Quite interesting conversation today.
Indeed, and I'm sure that you have your own thoughts. But let's link it to what is on the front page of the New Telegraph. And of course, it captures some of our early commentaries on the program. Tinubu sent state police bill to Senate. There are a few riders there. You see that we're not out to sabotage move. That's ascribed to the police. Dual policing structure will make security community-driven, proactive, and that's ascribed to the Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio. There are two more here. Senator adjourns emergency plenary over rep's death. Kaduna bandits kill 6 farmers in Birnin Gwari local government area. That's in Kaduna. And soldiers killed in IED blast buried with honors in Sokoto. So, Mr. Akiria, quite a lot for you to weigh in on. But let's begin with the top one there before you go to what the writers are saying. It appears as if the president is really pushing for the state bill to become law. But would he move the needle, considering all the other matters relating to the fight against insecurity, one of which is what we talked about, funding?
Yes, absolutely. I think what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is trying to do right now is to, confront the issues as they come. The debate for whether Nigeria needs, multiple layers of security has been on for, well, as long as we can remember, particularly since 1999, that, we then returned to popular democracy, as it were. So I think what the president is trying to do, I look at it from 3 perspectives. One, he is trying to, devolve, the security architecture to the state so that focus will no longer be on the president alone. Now the governors are going to be exposed because already the governors now know that with this bill becoming a law, the responsibility of securing their states now lies squarely on their table. Now, I read reports this morning that some of the governors are complaining that 3%, that 3% that is being allocated to them, to manage this new security challenge, the law will not be enough to pay salaries for the state police that will be set up in the various states. So that is on one hand. On the other hand, states will now have the responsibility, to enforce the laws. Many of the states, has already passed the anti-open grazing law. They've passed all kinds of laws, child rights law, and all of that. But they are not enforced. If you travel across Nigeria, you discover that, cattle are roaming everywhere. Children are, underage children are selling when they should be in school. All kinds of problems. So now the responsibility will now lie squarely on the shoulders of these state governors, to deliver. So the governor, the president will now have some breather. Yes, the president will then have a responsibility to manage security issues that affect the entire country, maybe the army, customs, finance, and all of that. I see my interpretation of what is going on is a gradual, devolution and decentralization of power from the center to the subnationals. We'll be talking about true federalism. This is one step that can actually, gravitate towards true federalism. So I commend the president this morning. Yes, it's something that is long overdue. What comes across to me is that President Tinubu appears to have the will, to venture into areas that other presidents, were wary of. Look at subsidy; he took it out. He scrapped the multiple exchange rate, and now he's talking about state police. This one comes through. The president will go down in history as one man that was able to dare where others, we're scared, we're afraid. So it's for me, it's a welcome development. I come from Delta. Delta State has the anti-open grazing law, but each time I go to my state, I see cattle everywhere. So the responsibility will now be on the shoulders of the governor of Delta State to ensure that that law is enforced using state police. But the other argument about the abuses, the possible abuses, the apprehension that it might be abused, state police will be abused. For me, the fear of the unknown is even the beginning of wisdom for some. But I think that it's a necessary evil that we must not embrace. If the governors decide to abuse it, I heard the Senate president talking about also introducing safeguards that will curtail such excesses. So we must at this point as a nation, embrace growth. We cannot continue to. There's a proverb which says that if you cannot, because of darkness, pass feces in your house, you must enter the darkness and go to the toilet. So we must continue to venture, take on challenges to deal with these current security challenges that we have.
Interesting points that you have raised that should be considered and should also help us reflect on some of the decisions of the past, the vote against cattle ranching for, cattle by that committee, led by the former INEC chairman. I'm wondering if it is auguring well for the fight against insecurity. But of course, we'll weigh in on that much later on. Before we exit the New Telegraph, there's one story that I also want you to weigh in on this morning. U.S. designates Nigerian, other financiers of ISIS. What are your thoughts on this? It appears Nigeria is yet to exit, some of the, if you like, black books of the U.S. government where insecurity is concerned.
Well, it is sad this morning that we appear to be relying heavily on the United States for our intelligence, for, even to bomb terrorist enclaves. I know that the Air Force in the past has been trying, they relish us with reports that they've attacked terrorist enclaves. But when the U.S. does strike, whether it's in Sokoto or elsewhere, we see the optics, it's all over the place. So this time around, the U.S. is telling us again, that they have uncovered a financier of terrorism linked to the Islamic State in the Sahel, ISIS. So what really is Nigeria doing? That brings me to what, the Senator representing Kebbi South, Garba Maidoki, said yesterday on this station, PoliticsToday, with Sean Okimbaloyi. I listened to him very well. And yes, beyond the fact that if he had been granted automatic ticket, perhaps nobody will get to hear all of this. So it is also good that there is an internal implosion, which I've predicted in the past that maybe the APC itself, if it fails to manage its internal affairs properly, some of its members will move to other parties, and then they will be able to tell Nigerians what has been happening inside. The door has been shut for so long, and perhaps when some of them are able to come out, they will tell us what is happening. Maidoki said that only 10% in the last 3 years, of the military budget has been released. That is alarming in the first place. So if you are not releasing security budget to security agencies, how will they gather intelligence? How will they follow up on terrorism financing? How will they even tackle terrorism that is spreading very fast across the country? So this is where the political class takes the blame. It is not enough to be talking about state police. Yeah, we can establish state police. If the funding is not there, it becomes an exercise in futility as far as I am concerned. So what has happened in the last 3 years, that just a paltry 10% of the budget that has been defended by the different services is given to them. So where is the money sitting? So for me, that is a very serious issue. If you just oppose that with Nigerians that are suffering in South Africa right now, that APC is supposed to lift back home. I understand the president has signed off money for the 3 trips that we move about 1,000 Nigerians back home. The money is sitting somewhere. So who are those in government that is sitting on budgets, sitting on monies that are supposed to be disbursed to ensure that Nigerians get results? This is where the president needs to put his feet down and come very, very hard on anybody that is doing all of this. For me, I see that as sabotage. So I commend the U.S. The U.S. appears, really to be assisting Nigeria in getting things right. But for how long are we going to rely on external countries, foreign countries, who are also, in my view, yes, they give you with one hand and then they take with another. For now, Nigeria is almost a playground for the United States, France, and the Chinese. We really, apart from construction of the airport, railway, and the roads that the Chinese are doing, I also know that the Chinese are heavily involved in illegal mining. Fingers have also been pointed at them, for also funding and sponsoring militias that protect some of these mining sites. So the government needs to put its ass together and put its feet down. We can't continue like this and allow foreigners dictate what happens to us internally. So for me, we pride ourselves as the biggest black nation on earth, a sub-regional power. It is time to walk the talk.
Let's go to the Vanguard newspapers, leading with literally the same thing, but I'm trying to look for other stories that has to do with national interest. Maybe school abduction, just beneath the major story. Makinde imposes 16-hour curfew in 10 Oyo LGAs over security concerns. That's a page 26 read. What do you make of the story?
Well, we are fond of, governments are fond of imposing curfew. Why? I remember the Oyo State government said it has acquired a drone that has been assembled by the Nigerian Air Force in Lagos. Now, they've gone cold on that. So has the drone been deployed? Has the assemblage of the components of that drone, is it completed? Has it been deployed into service? If we have technology, we don't need to close down 10 local governments. Even if you close down the 10 local governments, for me, if the whole idea is to block the abductors of the teachers and the pupils, it is almost futile, because because it says it's from 4 p.m. to 8 a.m. So the other hours of the day, what happens? It is open. What we need to do is to increase our border security in this country. A whole lot of things are coming into Nigeria that should not come in. People are moving across borders. Perhaps that is where the state police would be very effective. Once there's state police, the different states will be able to block their border, conduct proper searches on people going in and coming out of the different states. To that extent, that is going to be helpful. But I do not see how this curfew is going to help the Oyo State government. The government should invest heavily in technology, invest in drones, invest in surveillance equipment that can monitor the entire area. Enugu State has that. Plateau State has that. Even though there are still killings in Plateau State, but I visited some of these command and control centers, and they are quite effective. That is the direction that we should be going in this country.
All right, before we leave the papers, Mr. Kaya, let's talk. There's a story. I did tell you that the sister station had one of the aides of the president, and some of the things that were quoted is things he said that didn't align with what the president said, talking about hardship. Maybe he doesn't see the level of hardship that Nigerians talked about. It's a bit of obnoxious statement in my view, but it's within his right. Vanguard newspaper has a story that says hardship. Civil servants demand 400% wage increase. This is credited to the Joint National Public Service Negotiating Council, the trade union side, calling on government and states to approve and implement 400% increase in the current national minimum wage. That's from the 70,000. So maybe we're talking about something in the board of maybe almost 300,000 or more. The governors always praise the president for, redirecting funds that were meant for subsidy to them. Now they don't have to borrow, and they're even paying back their debt. But nobody's talking about wage increase. What do you make of the story?
Well, it's unfortunate that, you know, the labor movement in Nigeria, workers are always asking for wage increase. Now, for how long are wages going to be increased to meet up with the rising cost of living? What I think that workers should do is to put pressure on government and the National Assembly, as it were, because the National Assembly has oversight, you know, on the executive, to ensure that some of these economic policies that this administration has put in place is reviewed. No, for example, fuel subsidy. To what extent has the removal of subsidy helped Nigerians, you know, to overcome the economic challenges? Okay, and so the disparity in the exchange rate, that is a welcome development. But we are still borrowing. The Tinubu government is still borrowing. What we have seen, while the state governors are celebrating increased fund allocation to them, the fund allocation is not coming from oil sale. It is coming from the blood and sweat of Nigerians that have been taxed, that have been overtaxed. So it is Nigerians that are actually paying all of these monies, whether it is stamp duty, whether it is fuel, whether it is the last four tax laws that are in place that is already been implemented. All over, consumption taxes everywhere. Whatever you buy, there are taxes, you know, built into everything that Nigerians buy now. Therefore, it has significantly affected the purchasing power of Nigerians. That is what we should be addressing. Goods and services are high. We look at the price of cooking gas, which is a direct, it has direct impact on every Nigerian. If gas is already over 2,000 naira per kilo, that is a big challenge if you aggregate that against the minimum wage. So these are the issues that the government must address. It is not enough for the governors to celebrate that they have funds now, but to what extent are the citizens and Nigerians, you know, benefiting from their God-given word? That is the challenge. Now, with regards to an aide to the president saying that he has not seen hunger anywhere, and that Nigerians, perhaps, he is blaming Nigerians for crying wolf where there is none. It's so unfortunate. In a Senate climb, that aide should have either resigned voluntarily or the president fires him. If I'm governor or a president and any of my aide, what is speaking at variance with what I am saying, then such individuals have no place in the government. So that's an overzealous behavior, an overzealous act that is very offensive, you know, that it can actually, instigate Nigerians into some form of resistance and violence. And that's what we see everywhere, pockets of resistance and violence because of comments like this that is coming out from, those who work with the president. Why the president is assuaging Nigerians, is appealing to them, you know, to bear with the administration, and that the fruits of some of these policies will soon come out. Some of his aides are speaking at variance with what he says, and that is extremely dangerous for national cohesion, in my view.
Well, Mr. Akiria, it appears as if this is peculiar to aides of presidents, because I remember former senior special assistant to late President Muhammadu Buhari, I believe Mr. Garba Shehu, who once said, at the time that the price of agricultural produce was going up, that the price of agricultural produce was coming down. So maybe there is a special farm market for aides to presidents where they go to shop, and it's different from the same market that you and I shop. That's on a lighter note. Let's quickly look at what the
the interesting thing is that it just simply tells you what happens to governors and the president. The people who surround them mislead them. They give them the impression that all is well when it's actually burning, the heat is out there. So when this man, when Shehu Garba said that, you know, he gives the impression to Buhari then that all is well, that his principal is doing well. And that is exactly what is happening in the country. So if the principal does not come out to the street to interact with Nigerians, or does not develop alternative avenue of getting information, then that leader is likely going to be misled by his own aides and people that surround him.
Well, that's as instructive can get. I was going to go to The Guardian, but we're totally out of time for this segment. But we must thank you very much. Mr. Igo Akiria is a member of the Guild of the Editors of Nigeria. Thank you for coming through on the newspaper review segment.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.
Indeed. And that's all for the newspaper review segment, but there's more to reflect on as far as national security is concerned. Questions that should trail naturally the state police bill that has now been transmitted to the Senate for consideration, of course transmitted by President Bola Tinubu. So stay with us for this next one. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's get right into it. Mr. Dixon Osagie joins us. He's the MD, Debris Protection Services Limited. He's also a security consultant. Mr. Osagie, good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning, Bukola. Thank you for having me.
Now, let's begin with the matter of state police. The bill has been transmitted to the Senate for speedy consideration, and we did hear the Senate President say yesterday that it will be dealt with on two levels. It will be embedded as an act of parliament, and besides that, it will also, the constitution will also be amended to accommodate it. So let's begin to reflect on, and I want you to help us in this regard, on what this would mean in terms of structure when the framework is concluded, documented and gazetted. Structure being at the state level, what would state police then look like? Because we already have, for most states, security initiatives, local security network in most states that have been adopted by state governors. What would this then look like? Would it be a fresh recruitment exercise, or will this be an absorption of local security networks that we already have? What are your reflections on this?
Well, I think it's very technical from your analysis, and I think that everything is going to go well from the beginning, and as well, if the National Assembly, consents to it, it's going to be, one step at a time. We all have our own concern, the negative perspective of the state policing and the positive perspective. But let me focus on the positive perspective, because a lot of us believe that if this state police comes to play, it's going to bridge the gap between the people and the policing system. Because what policing is all about is, bringing the people close to the policing system, so that the police can get intelligence. They can also, have confidence on the policing system. So for now, those, various organizations that have been established by state governors in the area of, community policing level, I think they're going to, integrate it to the state policing system only if they carry them through effective training, so that they don't go with that local mentality, because I've seen a lot of them acting without being trained, taking laws into their hands as well, because we've all condemned the federal police system for taking laws into their hands. We've also seen Amoteco and other, network within the northern region taking laws into their hands. So this time around, if we're going to look at the structure, first of all, the establishment of the state police commission will need to, bet a very good board system that will bring a lot of experienced officers on board that will manage the command structure of a state policing system. Because we speak, Bukola, the federal policing system has some deficiency in the area of morale, in the area of, motivation, and also in the area of deployment, housing, and as well, training. So we cannot bet a new policing system when the federal policing system has some deficiencies. So the state police system, the state governors must, derive, lesson learned from the federal police system and ensure such, negative lessons, negative issues are not brought into the state policing system. So if we are going to, induct or, bring on board all the existing localized security network, what is very important now, Bukola, for the state governors to start doing is to roll out a training curriculum that will cover crime prevention, crime response, anger management, crowd management, and as well other, essential trainings that these guys will, have to ensure that they don't mess up the state policing system, so that we don't go back trying to, take them out from our space. So I think if we look at the command structure from the state police commission, they also have the board system. From the board system, we have the commanders, we have all other, structures in place to ensure that abuse will not be possible from political leaders and as well from state governors.
We'll come to the matter of abuse, but what it would look like in terms of structure is something that is very important. And I say this because the Inspector General of Police had to assure the force, members of the force, that their jobs were secure and the matter of state police would not negatively impact on them. So I'm wondering if state police commands across the 36 states of the Federation will be retained, or there'll be a collapse in, I'm not quite sure, and what nomenclature would look like. Would we still have Ebubeago, Amotekun, depending on which part of the country there is? If you have thoughts on that, it will be interesting to know what you think. But also, what would then be categorized as federal crime and what would be categorized as state crime to now be handled by state police?
Well, fantastic question. Crime is crime. There's no crime that is federal, there's no crime that is state. If you kill somebody, for example, today, you will say it's a state crime or it's a federal crime. The whole essence is that every state should be able to manage their, what they call security design. Because if we don't have that measures in place, I tell you, a lot of things is going to go wrong. So from the state perspective, whatever is above the state, they can refer to the federal government. If, for example, there's a crime in progress, and this state policing system, they have the helicopters, for example, they have the helicopters to chase these criminals, they have the machineries, they have the equipment, they can go after these guys and ensure that they bring them to book. But when it comes to the federal policing system, whatever is beyond the state, they can transfer to the federal system, except the law permits that, okay, anything that has to do with assassination, killing, transfer to the federal government. That is going to be a bridge between the state policing system and the federal policing system. But, like you already said, the Constitution and also the National Assembly must draw a clear line between the duties of the state policing system and as well the federal policing system. So we don't have state police officers doing the duties of federal policing system. But in a nutshell, what I strongly believe is that the state policing system will be able to curtail crime, because crime is crime. Even though we have classes of crime, but I strongly believe that if crime is crime, the state policing system and also the state government can be able to mitigate such a situation. But if it's overpowers them, then I tell you it's going to be an issue, and as well they can as well report back to the federal. So for me, the line must be drawn. What is expected from the federal? What is expected from the state? So if you see that policies, we'll be able to analyze the policies. But as we speak now, we've not seen the policies, the duties, responsibilities of the state policing system, where they draw the line between them and the federal policing system. Then you're talking about, trying to, all state commissioners should be, normalized to state policing system. I don't think that is going to work, because if we talk about state policing system, we should be able to have people that are from within the states. Are you with me? Because most times we fail to understand that crime prevention is very essential and very systematic, whereby the people need to trust the police, the people need to deliver information or pass information or intelligence to the police. But as we speak, a lot of people are scared of passing information to the police. Like the killing in Delta State sometime last 2 months, where the young man was assassinated in the broad daylight. Intelligence got to the police, an informant that, hey, there's somebody expecting a parcel, and they didn't manage that information well, and that guy was eliminated. In such situation, nobody want to pass information to the police. So the state policing system must design their intelligence network and as well design their operational network to ensure that they don't, clash within the federal policing system. But let's see what the National Assembly or the document is going to roll out on their duties and responsibility, so that we don't have a conflict of interest where you now see state policing system engaging in a battle or in a fight with federal policing system, or where you now see, battle of superiority. So we're going to draw the line. They have to draw the line to ensure that battle of superiority does not emerge.
I think the broad idea, broadly speaking, of state police is a brilliant one. Our concern is always how it will be operationalized, given the kind of politics we play in Nigeria, and given what we're dealing with at the moment. So I'm trying to always highlight the cons, because we already know what the pros are. Because if we don't manage the cons properly, to make a mess of the pro. And one of the biggest cons here is the susceptibility to abuse of power. And that has to do with the recruitment process and all of that. So in your expert point of view, how do you think, because the governors are going to be appointing CPs, just like the president appoints IGPs and all of that, the governors are going to be appointing CPs. I've not seen the entire framework, so when we see it, we'll be able to speak authoritatively. What the National Assembly will do is to give a major constitutional framework as a ground norm, and then each state will be able to leverage on that to design what suits every state, because what is happening in Borno is different from what is happening in Cross River and different from what is happening in Benue. So everybody has to design by aligning with the ground norm. So how do we insulate political interference from, at least fair enough, from our policing system when we get to this stage of state police? But if we sit here and tell ourselves that politicians will not use state police, governors will not use state police against their political enemies, I think we'll be very naive. So we need to prepare for that.
Oh, fantastic, Geoffrey. We need to prepare for that, like Raleigh talked about, because we speak, politicians are even abusing our federal policing system. You see police officers carrying portfolios, carrying bags of politicians, and moving around our space. And as well, sometimes I tend to wonder, are these guys really trained as police officers? Because it's abusive when you see police officers who are trained to protect the citizens, to protect the state, or concentrating their effort on political allies. Because what we are seeing presently, and majority of IGs, to be fair with them, they've tried to see how they can ban it. Even the president has already banned police escort and other policing duty that interferes with the normal policing policing design. So for me, Geoffrey, what we'll be looking at is that from the state perspective, we should have a system whereby, or a punishment system, because everything boils down to punishment. If you don't put punishment system in place, crime flourish. So for us to excel in the state policing system, the National Assembly shouldn't be in a hurry, because what I'm saying is that if they are in a hurry, they shouldn't be in a hurry. They should redesign the document. They should see the document. They should look at the abusive line where they can put in structures in place whereby it will be impossible for state governors to abuse these people. Like you already said, the IDP has been appointed by states by president of our country. We have seen how some previous IGP, applied excessive use of force because they are being loyal to the president. What we should be looking at is loyalty to the people, because policing is not about loyalty to the person or to the governor or to the president. It's all about being loyal to the people. Because if you want to have selective loyalty, I tell you, you're not going to succeed, and the people are going to look at you. And that is why the Nigerian police have been working so hard to rebrand their image, stating that police is your friend. I don't need to tell you that Geoffrey is my friend or Dixon is Joseph's friend. Friendship, comes natural, and you can feel it. But when the people feel the have the feelings that the police are not to be trusted, or they can't trust the police, we begin to have this kind of issues. So from an abusive perspective, or let's leave abusive perspective, because it's going to be it's going to take place. That's short banker, because election is coming, and a lot of state governors want to say, hey, I'm going to appoint you, and you're going to do what I say I want you to do. Please, you have to be loyal to me. We should have a system whereby even the state governors should not even have hands in appointing the commissioner of police. Let the state police commission, come into selective process, an open, selective process. Get the best hands, interview them, screen them, set an exam for them, and they go through a board exam and as well a board screening. Then from there they approve somebody and notify the governor and say, this is the person we have selected and this is what the board have selected. They pass it through the state assembly, and then the person is being approved to be a state commissioner of police. If that is going to work, Geoffrey, is going to mitigate abuse. But once you give the governors, maybe perhaps the state constitution permits them to do so, or the constitution that is going to be amended and also the policies about the state police is going to give governors the power to elect state governors, state policing of state police commissioners. Then what they should be looking at is that they should draw a line, abusive line, and ensure that any governor or any political elite who abuse this system must be caught to book. But for me, Geoffrey, I think we don't even need to start speaking to our politicians or whatever the case may be. Every police officer should know and should be well trained and to understand that, hey, their allegiance is to the people. It's not to a politician. I've seen in America where some people that Donald Trump appointed, get to resign and say, hey, I cannot toe the line you are going. So when we start having police officers that have the meritocracy, pragmatism, and also honest, if they have this MPH methodology or system, I tell you, they'll be able to, they will, let me say, be loyal to the people, Geoffrey, and they will not abuse themselves. So everything boils down on honesty and meritocracy. We have that on board. I think state policing will excel. So every person that comes to board must respect the people.
Yeah, Mr. Sadio, with what you know, and of course, the bill is before the National Assembly. Corrections, amendments, all of those things, modifications, adjustment, tenses, all of that will happen. Maybe perhaps a little bit more faster than it should be, but we must be cautious to put all the guardrails. Where I'm going to, my question is, when do you think, when the laws are passed, how soon do you think we can have state police operational in Nigeria? 2026, 2027, or later?
Well, it depends on what the law says, like you rightly said, because they will give a timeline. But election is coming, 2027 election is coming. I think I won't want the government to be in a hurry to establish it now before the election. It should be post-election. Why I'm saying so is that so that these guys don't face a very tough time from our politicians. So for me, I think we should try to hold on until after the 2027 election. And Geoffrey, another part to be worried about is the northern area, where you have a lot of terrorist situation where we're being, engulfed by terrorism and as well banditry and insurgency. And from my own perspective, I'm beginning to worry that if we start bringing in guys on board, or repentant terrorists or repentant militants, and try to see how we can bring them into the state policing system, there's going to be a very big issue in the area of intelligence, because a terrorist today is a terrorist forever. It's an ideological driven mentality. So for me, I think the state governors should be very careful in the area of employment and the area of recruitment and the area of training, so that you don't bring past criminals on board. Because if you are a criminal, you are a criminal. If you are an ex-convict, you don't have any business coming to serve the state, except you are going to play in the area of informant. So I think the state policing system, like you already talk about the pros and the cons, I think it's going to work. But for me, I would suggest that this state policing system should kick off after the 2027 election, so that these guys can grow, keep growing and keep growing, learn to fail, learn and fail, and progress towards 2031 election. Let's see what's going to happen. But if the federal government says no, they have to start immediately, then I tell you, 2027 is going to be very tough, and it's going to be an opportunity for us to test the integrity and capability of the state policing system.
Now, I want you to share your wealth of experience on this particular related matter, and that would be, what would be the powers, the additional powers that the governors will be having under this new framework? And I ask because it is often asked that is there any command currently that a state governor would issue to a state police commissioner that he cannot carry out? So from your wealth of experience and interactions with state institutions, what are the current limitations, and is there any particular command that a state governor would issue that a state police commissioner would not carry out?
Well, I don't think so, except maybe the governor is asking the state commissioner to go and execute or eliminate some criminals. Most of us think that these state police commissioners, they don't listen to the governors. They do, but sometimes if they get any information, they transmit a signal to Abuja to notify the IG of their action or action in progress or any actionable intelligence. I was privileged to, communicate to a commander in Lagos sometime last week, where some guys were eliminated themselves somewhere in the west, and the commander responded within 24 hours, to take out and arrest most of these criminal elements, not to talk about a governor, because we all have a duty to play when there's a crime in progress and you believe that some society or some people or an environment are being threatened. So for me, I think the commissioners have been taking orders from the governors, and the only area there is that the response time, because when it comes to security, time is very important. Speed is very important. So most of the delay factors is maybe perhaps when they want to, transmit signal. And whatever the case may be, any governor that receives any, order from any commissioner that receives any order from state governors, they usually communicate. That's why they have the signal department, whereby they transmit the information to Abuja, notify Abuja about the incident, and as well they have their daily security briefings that they brief the IDP. So for me, I think the only area is sometimes maybe when the IGP will ask them to wait in some certain areas or maybe some sensitive operations. But I don't think, like Lagos State, the Lagos State Commissioner of Police, has been responding swiftly to crime situation. We've seen him moving around Lagos State, carrying out some surveillance activities personally to ensure that his police officers are all, up to the task, and as well ensuring that people don't go beyond board. So if we have the state policing system, I also strongly believe that if the state governors are going to be passing fishing orders to the state police commissioner, the state police commissioner must also learn to let the governor know orders that are acceptable and orders that might not be acceptable. This is not going to be an arena or an avenue where you say obey the last order. No, it's not going to be obey the last order. It's going to be obey, an order that is good for the people, an order that is against criminal behavior, and also an order that will put the society in a state of peace. So, Bukola, we are in a dicey situation. Nigeria is being messed up from the east, west, south, and north. We are suffering from multidimensional security threat. And the approach now for state policing system is a welcome development. Let's try it and see. You have to get married to a wife to know if it's a bad wife or a stubborn wife. So we are getting married to state policing system, and let's bring the wife on board and see if it's going to be a good wife. Let me not use the word housewife.
Well, that's as vivid can be, and should help us make up our minds. There's so many other elements to it. The state governors are seeking guaranteed constitutional provision for funding of the state policing structure, amid the consideration of the bill. But there's security vote and there's increased allocation. But I'd leave you to reflect on that, Mr. Dixon Osaje. We must anchor this conversation at this point. Mr. Dixon Osaje is the MD, Debris Security Network, and is also a security consultant who has brought his experience to bear on this conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bukola. We'll expect our new wife soon.
We'll take a moment now, and when we return, we'll go to our next leg of the conversation, which affects your pocket. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
All right, let's talk about liquefied petroleum gas, LPG. It's as cooking gas. It's increased astronomically in recent time. 1 kg could go as high as maybe 1,007, 1,008, even 2,000 plus, depending on where you're buying it in Nigeria. So if you're doing a 12.5 kg, which is of common size that a lot of household use, you're talking about something in the range of 20,000, slightly over or less than that. So what is responsible for all of this? Well, the players in the sector are joining us right now to help us make sense of it. Mr. Godwin Okodua is the founder, LPG in Nigeria. He joins us virtually. Mr. Okodua, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Good to be here. Thank you. Good morning.
I will ask the question that a lot of Nigerians ask who are not familiar with perhaps how the industry works. So that's why you're here to help us explain how this works. So there's always the argument of we have the yam and the knife. By that they mean we have the crude oil, we have the refining capacity thanks to Dangote and other modular refineries. Why are these things that expensive? So where do we get LPG from for Nigeria? And although what has happened in Iran happened, we have seen that we are close to energy sovereignty because we're not dealing with availability problem, is affordability problem. So maybe you can tie all of this together. Where do we get LPG from that supplies a local market here? And why is it this expensive?
Right. Thank you very much. The major issue is the supply issue, actually. So you said we have LPG available, but why are we still, facing the issue of scarcity and high cost? The market is firstly deregulated. It's been deregulated for a long time. The market has grown from 70,000 metric ton in 2007 when NLNG joined the domestic LPG market to now 1.6 million tons, while deregulated, no subsidy. So although we had initial quasi-subsidy by NLNG at the beginning of the domestic program.
So,
why do we have this issue? Sorry?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Why do we have this issue? And I'll start with data. Last year, from the 1.6 million tons per annum that the country consumed, Dangote moved 700,000, 43% of the market. NNG did about 500,000 metric tons. The others came from the likes of Kwale Hydrocarbon and other gas processing plants spread across the south, south, and southeast. Then we had less than 20% imports. Prior to now, we had close to between 40 and 50% import. But when the Dangote refinery, started, there was no need for import. In fact, if you import, you get your fingers burnt. So, so this became the case. And why did we even have up to 15%? We had about 50% last year. We have 50% because the Dangote refinery went into maintenance. If you look at NMDPRA figures, fact figures of 2025, you will see. I don't know if you have it there. I shared it yesterday. You will see that in the month of September, there was this dip. There was this dip in the month of September. That in the month of September, the market took about 117,000 metric tons. Very, very low in the market that was doing 140,000 thereabouts. Why did it happen? It happened because Dangote refinery was down. There was maintenance going on, exactly. Right. Apart from the March figure, if you go to September and the outcry, there was this outcry, scarcity in September. Now, the what you have in orange there is the import. You'll see that in September, August, there was some imports. September, it was very low. The market felt it. This was when the queue started and there was the outcry, no LPG and all that. Why? Because the major, imagine the effect of Dangote in the market. With the maintenance, Dangote still gave us 700,000. So when Dangote went into maintenance, and after the outcry, imports, came up, and that's what stabilized the price before the end of the year last year. If you look at May, you will see that this year, if you look at the NMDPRA figures this year, you see that in May, the market came down from 145 thereabout to 123,000, and the market felt it. The market did not feel it because the Strait of Hormuz was blocked. The market felt it because there was no supply. In April, Dangote refinery announced commencement of production of petrochemicals. The same hydrocarbons used for petrochemicals is what is used for LPG. And it's more beneficial for the business. So where would the balance come from? So this was caused the issue. The issue was a supply issue. So you now see that in recent times, in the past 2 weeks, we've had import from rain oil and import from gas. We have more imports coming in, and this has assuaged the issue we have with supply. And now prices have started coming down from as high as at the depot, price went as high as 29 million, even 30 million in some places. We can now see prices in the range of 24, and even in some places like Dangote 23, thereabouts. So this is as a result of supply. So the market, the forces of demand and supply will always happen. Anytime supply is low, prices will go up. There's no subsidy. Is the normal economy 101, supply and demand. All right. And the major issue we need to move forward, we need to be more intentional with energy security. I'm repeating it again. It's very important. We must watch our reserves. We must watch we must know where our sources of LPG is coming from, and we must monitor it. We should not report figures after the fact.
All right.
Figures must be the information must be acted upon why it is happening.
All right.
I mean, okay. Is
Yeah,
that for me?
I just wanted to quickly follow up on some of the high points of your graphic illustration, particularly from September last year when there were disruptions. I recall that not long after that, in October, the group managing director of the NNPCL, Mr. Bayo Julari, did address the concern over rising cost of LPG at that time. And he attributed it to the disruptions in supply to Dangote refinery following a workers' dispute. Recall the dispute between Pengasen and Dangote, the management of Dangote refinery last year. And so currently there is no workers' dispute. I'm wondering what is responsible for this short supply that we're experiencing, that you're talking about, hence the increase in the price of LPG?
So I mentioned in April, Dangote mentioned that they were going to be, they were going to commence the production of petrochemicals. The hydrocarbons required for petrochemicals is the same required for LPG. So if you have your hydrocarbons for petrochemicals, where are you going to get the same volume of hydrocarbons required for LPG? So this is the gap, and this is why imports will be required, because when you look at the volumes coming out from NLNG, from BRT, and from the gas processing plants in country, it will not be, or the volumes will not be able to, make room for the shortage caused by the lower volumes coming from the DRP, Dangote Refinery, TPR rather, Dangote Petroleum Refinery, Petrochemical Refinery. So that is what is going on. So, but we need to know, the market needs to be assured of what volumes are we assured of that's coming from Dangote? What volumes do we have that can come from BRT and others? Because the last meeting yesterday held by the Ministry of Energy, there was a mandate to import. How would you ask marketers to import and face the risk of losing money? Because what could happen is, if you import and there's an influx of funds coming in from the Dangote refinery, you're going to lose money. It has happened before. And market opacity, when the market is opaque, when it's not transparent enough, what happens? It causes volatility in prices. And that's what could happen. Before we can effectively show up any scarcity, we must have data in place. The NMDPRA must watch the volumes to ensure that at any point in time, we're able to act, proactively, instead of waiting to act after the fact. All right? The market is driven by private sector, purely by the private sector.
We could talk about that, but Mr. Kodwa, the NMDPRA is also saying that retailers are not selling at the indicative price guaranteed by the regulators. So is there also a Shylock element in this sale of LPG?
Of course, there is. So you are asking a retailer that has bought a kg of LPG 1,004 to sell at 1,002 per kg. I mean, yes, there's a Shylock element, but there's a business element side of it. So how do we, like I say, these actions are coming after the fact. Going forward, how should we address it? We should ensure that we have enough supply to keep prices bearable. All right, to ask the retailers to sell below what they have landed their LPG is not. Right. I mean, it doesn't make the business sustainable. There has to be a concerted effort, better structure to manage this, and that's why I talk about managing the volumes, or the volumes data. The information about the volumes the market needs the information about the volume, or else this would happen again. It happened in September. Well, the strike, but it also happened when there was maintenance issue. And that's why you saw the
Mr.
rise in imports in November and December last year.
All right, Mr. Kodo, we're about to wind down. It's an important conversation we're having because what you sell and what your colleagues and the people in that space, the players, is used literally in every household, especially in urban centers and even in rural areas. So this LPG conversation has to be an ongoing one. But talk to us about, I know it's a free market, it's a capitalist or pseudo-capitalist economy run by this administration. I think we're beginning to get clearer on this, and Nigerians can make up their mind what to deal with. What does the margin look like when it comes to LPG business? Because I agree with you on sustainability, but people must be able to afford as well, which is why my colleague always used the term Shylock element. So what are we talking about in margin? Because if supply is disrupted, there will always be that increase. But what is the average margin that is industry standard? Let's use Nigerian industry standard. Are we talking, I mean, between what you bought it for and all your cost component versus your margin in terms of your profit? I know it's a trade secret, but just give us an idea.
It's not I may not be able to speak in absolute terms, but it's not fantastic. All right, it's definitely not double digit. All right, but I agree with the fact that during the scarcity there was outrageous pricing. It was really outrageous pricing during the scarcity. So, and it happens all the time. I mean, it happens all the time. Prices go up. I mean, you saw how the crude oil went to 120 at some point, the same crude oil, and now crude oil is doing sub 80 or thereabouts. So there is, but the margins are not fantastic. Trust me. And I also want to say that the system has been the same since 2007. It's been a deregulated system, and what we could do is to make more volumes available. There have been several discussions on the Chevron volumes. Chevron can potentially add 540,000 metric tons to the market. From the flare point, according to the Nigeria Gas Flare Commercialization Program, they can potentially add 600,000 metric tons to the market.
All right.
So these are...
Yeah, okay. my apologies. We're totally out of time. We have like 30 seconds. So I would like you to speak to this hoarding and diversion element. I know that from what I understand about these numbers, biggest cost, because these things are priced in dollars most of the time, so our exchange rate devaluation hasn't also helped in the pricing for everybody. But talk to us about the hoarding and diversion that the federal government complained about, that there's now a stakeholders conferencing to tackle it. If you can do that in 30 minutes. In 30 seconds, my apologies.
Okay, still after the fact. Now, there is no business sense in hoarding products when prices are dropping. So what you're seeing at the moment is an offload, a scamper. So if you have product that you bought expensive, you want to sell off before it gets down. So there is no incentive right now to hoard. Basic economics, basic business practice, there is no incentive to hoard. So what we have now, right, what the hoarding, whatever, is after the fact. So during the scarcity, there may have been an incentive, but not anymore, because we have more volumes in the system. I hope that helps.
Mr. Kodwa, thank you so much as always. We'll continue to keep tab with you. I wanted to trace it, but you've given us an idea that is not double digits, so it's something less than 10%. Godwin Okodowa, founder LPG in Nigeria. Thank you for coming on the program.
You're welcome.
Bukola, I have this one.
And as we head to our next conversation, it ties pretty much into it, because we're talking this time around about the economy. And Mr. Paul Alhaji, the founder, SPM Professionals, joins us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Alhaji, good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me.
Let's begin with what appears to be topical right now, and somehow is related to the price of LPG, which I believe is also a byproduct of petroleum, and it's the crude oil price conversation that has been impacted by the war in Iran, for which there appears to be some stability now after the agreement reached between the U.S. government and Iran. So naturally, there are expectations that back home that it will impact on the pump price of petroleum. I'd like you to weigh in on that, and what should be the expectations as far as the revamping of the economy is concerned. And I'd like you to also speak to what appears to have been Nigeria's profit from the increased price of crude oil in the last 6 months.
Yeah, thank you so very much for having me. Very good morning to you and your colleagues in Lagos. The agreement between the American government and the Nigerian government has since impacted on the price of crude. We have seen reduction from above $100 per barrel to around $80, $90 per barrel. That is where the range is. It's much expected because the price jump was as a result of instability and future expectation in price. Back home, we expect price of PMS, LPG, diesel, and all other byproducts to come down. But we might not see that on the immediate because in economics, prices are sticky. In the immediate, we can see some gradual reduction. What can make that happen very sporadically is supply. And when I say supply, I'm talking of volume, and I'm also talking of options. Consumer becomes supreme, or consumer is a king when he has options. Options mean we do not have a sole seller, we do not have a sole provider, we have multiple channels from which we can buy. So for us at home, we know we have our peculiar challenges. Perhaps the sole provider of PMS, diesel, and so many other products in Nigeria today is Dangote Refinery. That does not mean that others don't have some form of production that they do. But when we talk about significant production, and this is not to criticize what the refinery is doing, this is a wake-up call, which I've mentioned since 2019 till today, that we need to have provide reasonable competition before the refinery came on board. Now the refinery is here. How do we ensure that we have competition to improve supply, to even make that refinery more efficient? And clearly it's not going to be government-owned refinery, because I remember I was interviewed, I think by this show or the show after, a number of years back, when government celebrated that our own refinery are now back. And it was more like shaming some of us that says that do not solely rely on government refinery, except it's going to be managed purely by private individuals. Why we do not gloat? Because I will never gloat. A month after that refinery was celebrated, I'm wondering if we can have a 1 liter or a bottle of Coke of PMS come from that refinery as of this morning. My point is, we need private sector refinery to be multiple in our country, why we don't kill the one that is saving us right now. And people have said, oh, maybe we should turn to importation. My approach to importation has been very clear. It is not bad to say we should turn to importation, as we have been advised by some international organization. But my worry is that Nigeria's currency, the Naira, is very sensitive to importation in volume when it comes to what we need. And the truth is, if we import and there is a exchange rate volatility like we have seen, also supply volatility as we have seen in war between America and Iran, we are only telling the local manufacturer that the market can buy, you can also increase your price. So the best approach to all of this is for us to look inward and produce. Look for more supply to produce. I understand that there is one other refinery coming up to the stream. I wish government will provide all necessary support to any other person, just as we have supported and we have seen the benefit of having our own local refinery to work. What is the gain on our economy? The gain should have been price and also output. Revenue is not complete when you have only price and you don't have significant output. Ordinarily, as a nation, we should be doing not less than 2.3 million barrels, and that is just being charitable. But when you look at the numbers, we're not doing up to 2 million barrels a day. We're not doing up to 1.6 million barrels on the average a day. What does that mean? We wasted the war that could have benefited us, that could have helped us in revenues, which would have spent to improve schools, we could have spent to keep our hospitals, we could have spent to increase the volume of our road, we could have spent to empower our military to combat ongoing insecurity that we're experiencing in our country.
You talked about, okay, Jeff, you have this next one.
Yes, I wanted to dwell on this because we're talking supply here. Supply, two things primarily. Supply is on one hand, which whenever there's disruption, it causes even demand destruction itself. And demand destruction can only happen when there are alternatives. So that's on one hand. And then the other part has to do with the devaluation of our currency, which you rightly pointed out that is very, very sensitive. So I was looking through the refineries that are functional in Nigeria besides the Dangote refinery. We know the Walter Smith modular refinery, which has, I think they do 5,000. They have a capacity for another 50,000 because if they, when they commissioned the 5,000, they flagged off the order for the 5,000. So it should be 50,000 in the nearest future. I don't know what it is now. So as far as refining capacity is concerned, we're still building. And whether it can supply, we can be able to satisfy the local market. The data will speak to it. So why I decided to bring all of this in is that the market is deregulated. Deregulated, keyword. So what should Nigerians begin to look at in current terms? Because sometimes it looks like we may still be lost in the subsidy era, and this government has moved on from that era. So we always have this back and forth. I don't want to jump into the politics. I'll talk to politicians when it comes to politics, but I want you as an economist to look at it from the point of economics. How should we be prepared to always respond to issues around the energy sector because it is deregulated?
Okay, I think that's a very nice and very fair question. First of all, when you look at how you started your introduction, you spoke about one of the modular refineries that has installed capacity of 5,000 and in future it will have about 50,000. Economics is not just about future, it's about what are we consuming today. While economics has macroeconomic parameters, microeconomic parameters affect you and I the most. We can look at the macroeconomic parameters, say what's happening to unemployment, what's happening to inflation, what is happening. But when it comes to you and you alone, you are going to decide, am I able to eat? Can I afford to take myself to hospital? Can I have quality education that will make me at least interact and do business so that I can earn? Can I get decent jobs? These are critical questions you would ask. So for that installed capacity, it's different. That you have capacity, it does not mean you will use the whole capacity. And I talk to you as a parts manufacturer, as a person. That is why I need to underscore that. That somebody had 5,000 capacity does not mean his production today is 5,000 capacity. If it does, then we will feel it in the market. But we are not feeling it as it is. Now, you spoke about, the truth is that government has made it very clear that subsidy era is gone and we are not going back to it, at least for now, as we have seen it. Now, when you look at subsidy era, both in FX markets, I'm talking of foreign exchange, I don't want to lose any viewer, and also in the petroleum market, we have seen that subsidy is gone in those regards. What does that mean? The government is not providing kind of support to reduce costs for people. Now, what does all of this mean? It means that government wants to achieve a few things. One, stability in the market or relative stability. Number two, government wants to take the monies they were using for subsidy, and I'm talking under ideal circumstance, that such money should be taken into other critical infrastructures, other expenditure. Now, all of this is expected to help a nation, especially has been advised by some key international organizations to achieve stability. Now listen, stability is never the goal in economics. Stability is a transition period. What that means is when a country says that, oh, I am achieving stability, I'm having GDP growth rate between 4 to 7%, I'm having inflation reduced from, say, 30–40%, which of course is peeping or looking at hyperinflation right there, and I'm having that converge to less than 10%, say 6 to about 9%, and in some countries 11% to about 13%. When you start having all of those, you are having some kind of convergence, and you can have some reflection of stability, and your currency is not hovering beyond 1% or 0.5%, 0.5%, that's the distortion. We can say you have stability. But what is the real goal in economics? The real goal is ability of human being to have decent life. And that talks about standard of living. What that means is that for an household, what you earn will be enough for you. You will not see that stability is also inducing poverty. And not my figure. World Bank says about 7 million people were added, I think last year or so, to the poverty bracket. Does that mean that government intentions are not right? Or does that mean that we are not connecting enough? Does that mean that some of these gains that we have made from removal of subsidy at both fiscal and monetary windows, all of the subsidy we have removed, why is it that we are still having poverty increased instead of having some marginal reduction in poverty? I'll tell you. Key areas that all of the policies should impact directly. One, we should have major boost in export. And I'm not talking about marginal boost in export. Major boost in export. Two, we should have major addition to infrastructural improvement. Three, we should have more enrollment in schools and provision of quality education for our people. Number four, we should also have improvement in healthcare, which will be measurable in the quality of availability of instruments that we have in hospital, quality of minds and pay to those who are now managing those equipment. I'm talking of medical doctors, I'm talking of nurses, pharmacists, and all of those things. Workers that are doing the job, especially private sector and those in public sector, they should feel that even if there is no increase, and I want Nigeria Labour Congress to listen to this, because oftentimes I've argued, it's not just to come and fight for more wage. The one you have, you need to fight for economic transformation such that what you earn will be enough to take your children to school, to feed your family. And when we make all of those, and I will start bringing all of this together now, will be one, quality rail system. Very importantly, because for most countries that we look at, and most countries that is getting it right, you cannot remove quality rail because of cost of transportation. If you look at your cost component, look at what you spend on transportation. Two, housing. Can we have decent housing, especially for the poor? What housing we do is we create a lot of jobs for people who we even think are street urchin. Because when you have a house, perhaps you have an architect, you have engineers, but who are the people that carries the block? Who are the people that mix cement with sand and what have you? The carpenters, virtually most people, because when you say poor people, where do you find them in the pyramid of things? You see them at the bottom right there. And many of them are not professors in university, they are not PhD holders, they are not master degrees holders, they are not even BSc holders, even though there are some first degree holders that we've seen in that bracket. But when we now rejig the economy and look at what should be our priority as a government, and I'm speaking to the state governors and the state assemblies, and most importantly to the federal government, the president, the leaders of our country, the Senate, House of Representatives, I mean top politicians in our country, those that we have elected in office. What we should look at is how do we prioritize real estate. And when I say this, I'm not saying building, massive building, no. I'm saying low-cost housing. Partner with some real estate firms all around Nigeria, perhaps any state, or pick them geopolitical zones. How do we have arrangement at state level with them to provide low-cost housing? Not just because of the house at the end of the day, also because of the jobs that it creates, also because of how it's going to wind the economy and ensure that there is progress in economic activity, which is what many people want to see. Thirdly, we also need major infrastructure, which of course we have seen some of them in a few places. We need to expand this and make sure the impact is more sporadic. That is when people will say that the gain of subsidy removal, we are seeing it in jobs. The gain of subsidy removal, we are seeing it in housing, we are seeing it in ownership, we are seeing it in roads, we are seeing it in all of those. But the most important thing, perhaps, for 230 million people, the most important thing to all of us, to you right there in your studio in Lagos and to me here, and to that person watching us on YouTube or watching us on television, is when will power be relatively constant? I know many people have said, I mean, international organization, of course, most of the reports I've read over time will be complete deregulation of power supply will be the way to go according to them. But perhaps I have another opinion.
Mr. Laji, I'm sure that there is an abundance of recommendations on what the administration should do, even though the administration is itself also reporting progress on many economic indicators in reduction of inflation, capital importation, if you like, elimination of ways and means, stability in the foreign exchange. But you said something critical earlier on. You said the ultimate, as far as economic is concerned, is the well-being of Nigerians. And so, less than a year to the general election, it's good time to pass, to give a pass mark or a fail mark as far as the economy is concerned. From where you stand, what is your assessment of the success or otherwise of the administration on a scale of 1 to 10? How has it done as far as the economy is concerned?
Now we are here again. I try not to use numbers because what I say is really very weighty and very important. You suffer me not to use any particular number this morning, but I will give Nigerians the hint that we need. Number one is, if you are going to say you are better off, then you need to look at your income. Is it buying more things today than it was buying before? Remember that government increased minimum wage for 30,000 to 70,000. The question you ask is, for your minimum wage, can it buy you more food? Can you buy, how often can you afford what you need, the basic thing that you need? Like rent, what was rent before the minimum wage was increased, and what is house rent? And for most of your viewers, I know you have a very viable ex-handle. They can put it in the comment section to say, the rent in my apartment was this before, this is the rent now. A loaf of bread before minimum wage was increased, what was it and what is it now? Because look at this, you have children in school, and for most people, it's not private, it's private school, not public school. And this is why I said the conversation Nigeria Labour Congress must be having with our government should be, we need public school. And this public school is not even, I mean secondary and primary school, it's not even the federal government thing. Mostly state government and local government. Can we make this school decent? Can we make it where people can learn? So you're right about the school you are taking your children to. Is it better off in terms of school fees and the quality of education they are turning out? So loaf of bread, sachet of pure water, air tickets for the rich, because they are part of our population too. Is it cheaper today? Is it better tomorrow? And not just absolute cheaper. I'm talking of relative cheaper. Relative to your income. That is how you measure if the quality of life, that is what you earn, is even improving compared to what you were earning before. For some, yes, it might, but for majority, I doubt. So, but the numbers, I don't want to just quote, say that, oh, it's worse off, it's better off, it's good. I'm saying, let's set up a pool and ask questions that is non-partisan, that is non-tribal, that has no religious coloration, so that we can objectively say that these are the things that the outcome of what government is doing. At the end of the day, it is Nigeria that will grade our own government. And having done that, we also need to now put recommendation. What can we do differently? To my mind, some of the recommendations are more are the things I think authorities and leaders of our countries should do. And also, I'm not speaking just to government, even those of us in private sector should do to make our country a better place for people to live.
Well said, Mr. Alaji. Always bringing your recommendations. And I'm going to dwell slightly on where I started from with my question. Deregulated market, free market, in fact, they call it managed floats. I think the CBN at some point came out to say maybe in just about 1 to 2, at least for less than 5% in terms of intervention. So we've seen some level of discipline and seriousness with the current CBN. Although the distance between the inflation numbers and the interest rates is worlds apart, and there's a clear explanation to that effect because of the approach of this government. However, you've always talked about the misalignment between the macro and the micro in this sense. Their argument is always, it takes time. It's like they're saying this was someone on literally, the economy was literally dying. So first is to save the life, and you just tell the person from the bed, jump straight to run in an Olympics. It takes a gradual process. So when you hear those kinds of argument that has to do with timing of when the gestation period has to happen to when the fruits will be seen, how do you respond to such argument?
Well, I totally don't agree with that argument that we have to wait till eternity before we start seeing impact. Late MK Abiola of blessed memory, he said, and I quote, "If you use 20 years to rehearse madness, when are you going to practice it?" So for me, I think we need to be really very sensitive. Before subsidy was removed, we should have planned as to what would be the safety net for the most vulnerable in our society. But that was not done at the beginning. The next question will be, for the middle class or for those that are barely living above the poverty line, recall that we have over 140 million people that are living below the poverty line. But numbers also shows that we have tens of millions that are living barely above the poverty line. So what should we do for them today? What do they need? What impact do we need to give? What can we help them to reduce in terms of impact so that what they have will be very sufficient for them? So I don't think that we need to say, oh, how long will it take? I've had an interview that went viral at the time where oftentimes people say that at the end of the tunnel, there will be light. The question is, are you sure that there will be generator to power the light for you to have light at the end of the tunnel, even though you've traveled through the tunnel? Therefore, what I mean by that is to say that we do not need to wait for donkey years. The plan of what government is doing and the intention, good intention government has should be made open to Nigerians. You need 5 years. If you are saying time, then we have to put a timeline to it. In 5 years, you will take you from this point A to point B. What that does in economics is it gives people confidence. But I think beyond all of these conversations, why the impact is not felt by many, and we can see it in the numbers. We can see inflation dropped to below 16%. We can see unemployment on 1 hour basis around 4-5%. We can see GDP growth about 4%. We can see all of these numbers.
Mr. Alaji, I do not, my apologies, I do not want to cut your trail of thought, sir, because of time. So, in addition to, please don't forget what you were trying to say. Nigeria is sitting around the poor and lower middle income category as an economy. When you look at per capita income as released by the numbers that are released, whether it's the MBS or the World Bank, I think my critical question is Nigeria ready for a neoliberal capitalist economy?
You have just jumped into my next line of thought. Now, readiness is an important factor. And what makes us ready is our capacity to be productive. Productivity is what you need in a liberal, in a capitalist, or in a new liberal capitalist market. Our ability to say we are ready is measurable by volume or level of our productivity. And when I say productivity, not just at macro level, but as individual persons. What drives productivity? What multiplies productivity is electricity. What drives productivity and multiplies it is infrastructure. And we've seen some quantum infrastructure going on in Abuja and some part of Lagos, by the way. And I've seen that in a few states, and I can speak for about 15 states that I've personally visited in the last 6 months. And as an organization, we've measured the impact of this on the economy. Now, we need to translate all of this into impact, into productivity in people's life without any political connection. So here is it. No matter what we do, and we are doing some level of works here and there, if it's not impacting on cost, it's not impacting on people's productivity, many people, and I mean many part of our population, Nigeria today, we see it as we are suffering, it's having negative impact on us, and all of this. To my mind, I think what...
let me just quickly get this one in. You're an economist, a brilliant one at that. So if you were to chair the administration's economic team, and inevitably these reforms, had to be implemented, you're saying that, we don't require donkey years to see result. What timeline would you be giving Nigerians for the actualization of the gains of these reforms?
Now, for the kind of reform we made, we need minimum, we need a minimum of 4 years, a maximum of 10 years to have complete transformation of our nation. That is what we need. And transformation will come when people start feeling that we are better off, irrespective of what we earn. We are better off today than where we were coming from. That is why people will not look back to prefer the past to the future that is offered to them.
So by now, this is about the third year of the administration. So somewhere around next year, we should have been seeing the gains of the reforms of the renewed hope agenda of the government.
You don't even wait to the fourth year. No, you don't wait to the fourth year to start seeing the gain with subsidy removed, with devaluation happen. By now, we should have had abundant supply of food all over Nigeria, because that will take us between 9 months to 18 months for major harvest and food supply to happen. By now, we should have had some level of improvement in power. And what does that mean? Even though we are doing between 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts, what we should have had significantly by now, if some of those impacts are plugged directly back into energy sector, and government says, oh, we are not going to provide any kind of support again for energy sector. We can say that though the whole country may still not have, what do we call it now, constant power supply, but we could have gotten some zone, some production zone out of the entire bottleneck, instead of lumping everybody together and thinking that suddenly power will be better. Again, when you look at rail, I think to a large extent, we need to start seeing state government discussing with the Nigeria Railway Corporation, putting part of their vote to connect, to ensure that those get to their places, and we are seeing some improvement in rail. And that also has to do with housing. We do not need 4 years for us to start bringing low-cost housing to majority of the population. I don't know what rent is in Lagos, but I can tell you there is no smiling in Abuja.
So there we have your answer to an assessment of the economic performance of the administration. So we see it somewhere in your non-committal status. Based on what you have said, we should be asking more questions about why we have not seen gains of the economic reforms of the government. Mr. Paul Alaje is a senior economist, SPM Professionals. Thank you for coming through on this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, so many questions there about importation, economic performance, and all of that. But it's a never-ending conversation, and that's why we'll be back again tomorrow to ensure that you remain informed. Thank you for coming through, for being there on this one. Sunrise Daily is up next. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Jeffrey Uzama. Bye-bye.